Well, hey, good morning, good Sunday morning, folks. I was uh, I was asked some time ago by a gentleman on the channel named John Harris, and I believe it was my top four guitar video. Which, by the way, I really should have had the hummingbird on there as well. Just done a top five. He had asked me what my guitar journey was, so I kind of gave him a brief little blurb about how all that came about. And then he said he wanted to see a video on it. Now, I don't expect this video to get more than one or two views, but John, you better be one of them. But I thought I'd have just a casual discussion here about where I've been and where I landed up at this point in my life. And I thought, well, maybe I ought to do this video and kind of talk about that a little bit. So I'll put a few photos up where I have photos along the way here, and we'll not make this a lengthy video. But I will tell you, I got interested in guitar, I think, when I was about 6, 7, 8 years old, somewhere in that general vicinity. I believe my first guitar was some kind of a little acoustic guitar. You'll see my brother in this photo I put up, and I put it up before, holding that guitar while I may have had an electric guitar in my hands at the time, I think. I don't have a wealth of photos from back during that time, or maybe they're hidden away somewhere and we just haven't plowed through them. But I did a White Christmas video a couple of years ago, kind of talked through, what childhood was like and that kind of thing around the holidays, especially Christmas. And some of you saw that video. But while I taught kind of how to play White Christmas, on guitar. So anyway, I was probably right in that 8-year-old, I'm going to say, time frame. And I'd gotten I think it was an old Teisco electric guitar right after I had gotten my acoustic guitar. And so I started with that and Mel Bay, I think. I think my parents bought me a Mel Bay booklet that had all the various chords in it, and so I learned those chords. I kind of had an ear for hearing what was right and what wasn't right, as far as music notes go, and I never really pursued that. My first grade, second grade, third grade, I guess, music teacher, her name was Miss Payne, at Florence Black Elementary in Mesquite, Texas, back in I think that journey started about 1964 or 5. And 64, I guess, because we started first grade and was 6 years old. I guess they still do that. I don't know. She wanted me to take lessons. She thought I might have had something, but I didn't. I was a kid. I've said this before. I didn't want to take lessons for music and how to read music and do all that because I was too busy wanting to play in the dirt, at that age. But those were my first two guitars, and I kind of learned how to do chords on those guitars. And then, interestingly enough, on my street there was a young fella named Brandon. I can't remember his last name now. And he came from California to live with his sister, and they lived just up the road from us. And I may put a photo up of that street I lived on, and maybe the house or the kind of house that I grew up in. The one I grew up in actually doesn't look anything like it did. Matter of fact, the street doesn't look anything like it did, and the neighborhood doesn't look anything like it did anymore. But I'll throw a few photos of that just so you can kind of get a visual. But there were 3 of us on that street. 2 of us played guitar. Myself and, I say play guitar. We didn't play guitar. You understand? We made chords. And Robin Bewley, a young lady that lived up the street from me, not more than a year, maybe a year older than me. She passed away a long time ago. And I don't know what happened to Brandon, but he was the drummer. And that was the first little combo band. And thank goodness I didn't record anything. So I don't think there was much to that. You know, we played things like Louie Louie. You know, that's what we did. And there wasn't a lot to this little combo band, but it was an experience of getting together and coordinating with other people who played, you know, various instruments, let's say. And I really enjoyed that. So eventually I bought several other guitars. I bought a Silvertone 319, I believe, and it was 319 was pretty common for Silvertone to put on electrics and acoustics, I believe, and this was a hollow body electric. It was candy apple red, if I remember right, and I was so excited when I got that guitar. Although I have one remaining photo that's not even all that easy to see where I had that guitar. I was about 14, maybe 13 or 14 years old when I got that guitar. My parents bought it for me, and I was beside myself. I look back on things now. I really had some good parents that made sure that we had, whatever we had to have to try to improve our skill sets for whatever we were doing when we were kids. And they didn't make a lot of money, just so you know. You can see from this house that I've got up right here, this is exactly a replica of the house I lived in. As a matter of fact, it's right down the road from where I lived, and we all lived in that little place. And that's the kind of that's an exact model of the house I grew up in. It looked exactly like that when I was a kid. And so by that time I was going into high school, and I had met two individuals at Mesquite High School in Texas. In Mesquite, Texas. And one of them's name was Joe Garvin. He was a good friend. And the other one was Henry Stewart. He was a drummer. Joe played guitar, I strummed chords, and Henry, we used to call him Tank. But Henry, I don't think he goes by Tank anymore. I saw him 4 or 5 years ago, and I said, Tank, and he started looking around the parking lot. I had driven up to Mesquite, and he started looking around the parking lot, and he said, nobody's called me that in 30 years, 40 years. I said, I'm sorry, Henry. And he said, no, it's okay. It's okay. It was kind of good to hear it, So I saw him just a while back. But he was a drummer, and he was a really, really good drummer, by the way. And so he and Joe and I would go to Joe's house, and Joe lived over in, I guess you'd call it southwest Mesquite, area. And we would go into Joe's bedroom where we had all this equipment set up, and we would play. I think one of the first songs we actually did all the way through was a song by Bread called Mother Freedom. And now that's that'll take you back a little ways. And this would have been about 1972 or 3, maybe 4. Yeah, 73 or 74, somewhere in that general vicinity. And the band never really went anywhere from there. The neighborhood kids would come down and listen to us play, but if you want to call it that, it was the closest to a live show they were ever going to see, right? And so it was good times. And I had that Silvertone back then, and of course Joe, he was in love with that guitar, and so was I, by the way. But he wanted me to bring it every chance I got and come over so he could play it. There was a kid down the road from him named David who had a Gibson SG. And it's the first time I'd ever played one of those guitars, and I was pretty impressed with him. And David sometimes, I think, would come down and sit in a little bit. I don't remember what this kid's last name was, but that's a lot of years ago, from 1973, 74 to 2024. So I'm not going to chalk that one up to a bad memory. I'm going to chalk that up to some of these people I haven't thought about in a long time. And so again, it was the chord structure thing, right? And learning bar chords. And that's the kind of thing that we did. Never really did much else. And so from there, I was kind of, not really doing anything with guitar. I always kind of had one, maybe one guitar. They weren't expensive guitars by a long shot. That Tisco, I think, was made in Japan. And whatever that acoustic was that I have was very likely made in China or somewhere like that. And so at this point I had gotten married and we had started having children, and I got away from guitar just for a brief time. And then in my 30s, I guess, there was a country music venue up at a club. It's called the River Club now, I think, out on Highway 80 in Sunnyvale, Texas. And so there was some folks, there was a drummer that I knew, and I won't tell you how I knew him, but I had met this drummer, and we had assembled this country music band, and we played that club on Friday nights. We played it quite frequently, actually. And so by that point, I had learned how to do some things like, I don't know, just as an example, just little accentuating type things, is that a word, accentuating? Where you would do something just like that, Just where you could kind of pick a note, do a little hammer on, off, that kind of thing. Just something that gives the music a little bit of flavor. And by that point, I had played enough guitar that I could do a little bit of that. But still, I wouldn't call myself anybody that could play a guitar. I could survive doing rhythm in a band. And so that's kind of where that went. And I did that for maybe 3 or 4 years. And then I put the guitar back down again and got busy with work and life and all those kinds of things. And I didn't pick it back up again until, I say pick it back up again. I didn't really pick it back up, but I would need a guitar periodically because I had opened a small recording studio called East Texas Audio down in East Texas, where we lived. I'll put a picture up of that. Or I'll put a picture up of the control room. Folks, I wasn't much on snapping photos. I'm still really not that much on snapping photos today. So I had a console, and I can't remember what the console was, but it was a 32 channel. It could hold each channel would hold up to 2 inputs, so you could theoretically do 64. But it was a 32 channel console with an 8-track. I downloaded to an 8-track system, which from there you mixed it down to whatever you're going to do, a cassette, CD, whatever it may happen to be. So I did demo work for bands so that they could come in and do their demo tapes and that kind of thing and take them to clubs and go, here we are, what do you think, will you hire us? And I did that for, I don't know, a couple of 3-4 years, something like that. And then I sold the studio, and I had a wealth of stories about that. And anyway, I sold the studio, and I didn't pick a guitar up again and I sold that studio this would have been in the 80s, I guess, probably would have been in the early 90s, maybe, late 80s, early 90s when I had that studio. And I didn't pick a guitar back up again until 2024. Let's see, this is 2024, right? 2017, 2016, 2017, somewhere in there, 2018 maybe. We had bought a home, and I'd financed with Wells Fargo, and they sent me a deal and said, here, pick anything out you want for financing with us. And I looked, and there was a guitar in there, and I did not have one at the time. And I thought, well, you know, kids are grown and gone. I'd like to pick the guitar back up again. So I picked up this Ibanez that they had, an acoustic Ibanez, and it was a Chinese-made Ibanez. And they sent it to me, and I got it out and started playing chords. And of course, my fingers were raw, but it was enough to whet my appetite. Now, from there, I gave that guitar away, and I bought a Baxendale rebuilt Silvertone. And that is one that you see a lot of in my earlier videos because that guitar is pretty special to me. It really started my journey back to trying to learn more about a guitar. Now, if you're like me, I piddled the chords, you know, and then I would go, well, this is kind of boring, and I'd put the guitar down for a while, and I'd pick it back up, hurt my fingers all over again trying to get them calloused, and then put the guitar down, and then finally pick it back up again. You know, I never really stuck with the guitar, and so when I bought that Baxendale, that was not an inexpensive purchase. That was a 1969 Silvertone 319, another 319, but an acoustic triple O. I'll put a photo up of it. And it was the very first guitar that I picked up when I decided I'm going to learn more about guitars. And so I bought that guitar, and what a dice roll that was. That thing ended up being just absolutely amazing. And it drew me to wanting to learn more. Now, look, folks, I know what a guitar player is. I'm not that guy. I've seen guitar players. Now, if you put me in a room with somebody that didn't know how to make a chord, okay, that guy would probably say, or girl, you know, well, you can play guitar. But then I look at what a real, true guitar player does. And this is somebody that dedicates morning, noon, and night to playing guitar, and they are phenomenal at it, like a Tommy Emmanuel. Some of these professional, you know, Lindsey Buckingham, that kind of thing. And they've got a real talent for arranging chords and notes, and they hear things, and they're able to translate it onto the guitar. And I'm not saying I can't do that, but I can't do it on the level these folks do it. I'm not upset about that, just so you know. I rather like, in my older age, the ability and the freedom to sit around and noodle and have a good time. Now, I've learned some songs over the years. Who knows what song that is, okay? And I've thoroughly enjoyed that. But when I bought that Baxendale, I think I developed more of a love of buying guitars, how they were made, you know, how each one of them's braced on the inside, how just the process, the kind of glue they use on the neck, whether or not it's a bolted neck. You know, folks have, you know, you listen to some guitar reviewers and they got a problem with bolt-on necks. Well, let me tell you, Collings, I think, is doing that on their models, some of their models. And I believe Martin has started doing that over the last several years on a few models. If I'm wrong about that, somebody correct me. But 12th Root built that custom PRC for me, and that guitar has a bolt-on neck, and it's got an Adirondack spruce top, which is top of the line grain wood, and it's got East Indian rosewood back and sides. It's got rosewood binding on that guitar. It's the inlays are Mother of Pearl, I think, on that guitar. It's an absolutely stunning, amazing guitar with a nitros finish on it. And I love that guitar. But it's got a bolt-on neck, and I think a lot of folks are going to a bolt-on neck because, for those of you that may not know, the glued-in dovetails, so to speak, necks, after a while you have to have these necks pulled and reset on the guitar because they get weak over time. The bolt-on makes that a little bit easier, and I don't hear any loss of sound because I got a bolt-on neck on the guitar. So I got over this bolt-on thing pretty quickly and realized that there's some super quality guitars out there with bolt-on necks. But buying that Baxendale did something for me. I didn't know who Scott Baxendale was. I'd never heard of him. I had no idea the guy knew Emmylou Harris. He knew Jason Isbell, and I guess he knew Johnny Cash. He worked on his guitars at the Roy Acuff Museum, and he's known a lot of people in his career. He is very well known with his musicians. They all know him, I can guarantee you that. And Billy Gibbons, I think, is on that list as well, but with ZZ Top. But I didn't know who Scott was. I just called him up and said, hey, I see this guitar up here in Colorado in this shop, and what can you tell me about this thing? And he said, man, that's probably one of the best rebuilds I've ever done, rebracing. And I didn't say anything to him on the phone, but I thought to myself, what is he talking about, rebracing? What does that even mean? So I started doing some research, folks, and that's where I started learning a little bit about bracing. And I say just a little bit. It's kind of like playing guitar. I can make chords and melodies and tunes, I think, get by good enough to make me happy. But I didn't know what that stuff was. I didn't know what he was talking about with bracing. I thought it had to do with support for the guitar. And so I started doing a bit of research. I wasn't going to occupy his time for him to school me on all that. But when he said that's one of the best I've ever done, I thought, well, guy's taking my phone call here and talking to me about this. I'm going to go ahead and buy this guitar. Now, that guitar at the time was about $1,500. That's a 1969 Silvertone made in Chicago for Sears, and which was, pretty popular catalog back in the day for buying guitars, for folks that were, didn't have a lot of money. But he turned that thing into a Stradivarius. I mean, that's just one unbelievable guitar. You could not offer me $5,000 for that guitar. I wouldn't take it. That's how good that guitar sounds and how much I love it. So, but Scott really is the one that got me on this journey of appreciating well-built acoustic. Now, I wouldn't say there's not some, obviously not, there's craftsmanship involved in building electric guitars. But the main driver for sound for electric guitars is those pickups, and you're going to pay for that. But on an acoustic, it's almost like a work of love, These instruments, they're very unique acoustic guitars, and they're special. I'm going to say that. They're very special to me. And I think the care and detail that has to go into developing sound coming out of something that's not plugged in, that's a work of art right there. But that's what got me on this journey. And then I finally decided this is one I think a lot of people will maybe appreciate. I had heard John, now I throw his name up in the text box. I can't believe I can't remember his name right now. But he was an older gentleman that played fingerstyle like Elizabeth Cotten. And I had heard these folks before, but I'd never seen them play. So when I heard them, wherever it may have happened to been, on a radio or whatever back in the day, I thought 2 or 3 people were playing guitars. And I found out, nope, Mississippi John Hurt. That's who I was trying to think of. I won't throw the text box up now. But Mississippi John Hurt, and just a sweetheart of a guy. And it was only one guitar. It wasn't 3 guitars. It was one person playing guitar. And I thought, how in the world are they doing that? And so I thought, there's this thing called YouTube. Let me see if I can figure this, thing out. And so in one of the videos I think I watched with Mississippi John Hurt, he used the term fingerstyle because I had never really heard that term before. And so I YouTube searched fingerstyle guitar, and I started doing. First, it was the droning bass notes, right? And that was how I kind of started this thing. And then from there, I learned about this kind of Travis picking thing where you do the bass notes, right? And now that's, and then somebody finally told me about the string assignments on your fingers. I forgot what video that was, or I'd plug them. And at first, I thought, there's no way this is not natural. I think that might have been the first thing I learned right here on the Travis picking. And then from there, you kind of you work on it day in and day out. And I was determined to produce something out of this effort and get a little bit better on guitar, because I was tired of going in, picking a guitar up and just, and just strumming a few chords and leaving it at that. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what somebody wants to do, but I actually wanted to sit down and be able to develop and play something that was somewhat satisfying, And I love developing riffs and music and just various things with the guitar by myself. I don't have a desire necessarily to play with anyone anymore. I'm not looking to go out and play anywhere in particular. It's just me at the house, and on rare occasion somebody that can play shows up and we sit down and strum a little bit and play and do a little picking. But I'm not a professional musician. I got on YouTube because somebody suggested it, And I thought, well, maybe there's somebody out there that's worse than I am on a guitar, and I can at least make them as bad as I am. I can make them a little bit better, and then maybe they can go on from there. But guitars are very special instruments, in my opinion, and especially acoustic guitars. And for those of you that play a piano, or a violin, or whatever it is you're playing, you know your instrument of choice is rather special to you. And take a piano, for example. All the woods that go into that, every piece of wood that goes into a piano has something to do with the sound that's eventually achieved on it. And that's why the materials, the craftsmanship, all that. That's why you can buy a $300 piano, or you can buy a $100,000 piano, right? And same thing with a guitar, That's why I'm so impressed with this Mackenzie and Marr Grand Manan too. From the standpoint of the day and time we're living in, the only thing I enjoy about this day and time we're living in, culturally, is what's happened with guitars. Wow. Who would have ever thought a small artisan shop in China could produce something like this? But the guys in Montreal, Canada thought they could, and they worked with them, and this was the output of that. So if you haven't watched the review on this Mackenzie and Marr Grand Manan 2, please do so. But that's really my guitar journey. And the next thing you know, it turned into a couple of guitars, I got rooms full of guitars now. Got guitars in here in this little studio, got them in the closet, got them in the other bedroom, got the spare guest bedroom. I got them in and the bedroom of that closet. I've got guitar acquisition syndrome now, and I love it. I've been able to pick up some real gems over these last 5 or 6 years, and I absolutely love it. Now, I've been on YouTube I looked, and I think it said I joined in 2021. I don't remember when I started putting videos out. Somehow I think it was probably late 2021 or early 2022. When I did my first video, and it was horrible. I deleted it. That video had when I deleted that video, it had over 20-something thousand views on it, and I deleted it because I went back and watched it, and I thought, this is embarrassing. And of course, I had people telling me, do not delete that video. But I couldn't watch that. It was embarrassing for me to watch it. So I deleted it and redid the video. It was on the Epiphone inspired by Gibson Hummingbird, and it was awkward. You're sitting in a studio, you're looking at a camera, and you're talking to a camera, and fortunately I kind of do. Some of you may find this hard to believe, but I do a wealth of public speaking now. But that's different because you got a live audience out in front of you. And I love the connection of walking out and looking everybody in the eye while I'm talking. Now, looking into a camera, the only thing now that even makes the videos decent, if they are, and I got to assume they are, the subscribers continue to come in, is the fact that when I look at that camera, I really do think about just talking to you. Does that make sense? And so I don't get nearly as critical of my videos when I do that, if that makes any sense at all. I'm going to have to really chop and slice this video to get it kind of short, but I want to make sure I get in everything on this journey. After I sold that studio, I went through a pretty long period where, because I did some guitar work on some of the tracks and bands and people that would come in. I think the whole time I had that studio, we only produced one album. A girl named Gail, I think it was Gail or Gayla. Yeah, that was her name. And I can't remember her last name, but anyway, that was the only album that was produced, and I had that album all the way up until I think I moved the last time. We had this house built, and then, but the house before that, I think, is when I lost it in that transition. And crazy. The cover on that album was her. You're not going to believe this. Somebody snapped a photograph of her. We went into a park. We did all kinds of things to get shots to try to put an album cover on this. And the photo we ended up selecting was one somebody took of her pushing trash down in the trash can in her house. So we cropped out the trash can, and she had this beautiful smile on her face, and she was looking at the camera, and I just said, I don't know about you. We were sitting down reviewing all this, but I said, frankly, this is the most authentic photo I've seen. And she said, yeah, I agree. So we used that on the cover. But then I was just recording music. But that was a lot of fun. I remember times we were in the control room and a band had come in, and their lead vocalist, I remember this band really is a former drummer that I used to work with, and he they had a vocalist, and he could sing. He was the closest I'd ever heard anybody get to Robert Plant's vocals. He wasn't there, but he was the closest one I've ever heard. But he had this thing when he sang. He made these faces, and I mean they were crazy faces. And so I'm in the control room. I called the whole band in there except him, so they could go back and lay these vocals down over this recording that I had done with the band. And they were all in the control room, and he was out there belting it out. And I can't remember what it was. It might have been A Whole Lot of Love or something like that. And he started making all these faces, and we were all laughing so hard we were crying in the studio, in that control room. And to the point that we had to duck down so he couldn't see us through the window, okay? Because it would have, well, first of all, it would have hurt his feelings. He was a phenomenal vocalist, but those faces, okay, just made it absolutely hilarious. And, you know, it never occurred to me back then to video anything, which that guy's probably going to be really glad I didn't video his face. But it was hilarious. But, the studio was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and what incentivized me to open that thing, provided me with that incentive to open it, was I worked with a guy early in my career for what I do that actually pays for all this stuff. His name is Paul Osborn, and he owns Audio Dallas. And Paul and I worked together in our early career, and he had a homemade studio as well at one time. And so I really, once I saw that control board, I said, I would love to know how to do this. And Paul said, well, get your checkbook out because it's expensive. And so anyway, he kind of introduced me to it and got me set up with some of the things I needed to buy. I learned a lot of things the hard way, like when to use a compressor. You can lose channels on your board if you're not careful. And then, I think mixing was a lot of fun. But the problem is when you're these studio engineers, of course, it was just me, and I'd gotten another friend of mine there in East Texas, and he came in and helped me with some engineering. Billy Don Miller, I think was his name. And you have to step away from the recording. You can't sit and mix music for an hour. You have to do it in about 10-minute snippets, 10 to 15 minutes, I'd say, because you can get a little tone deaf with those monitors. And I had and still have the monitors from that studio because they were so good I would never sell them. But those monitors, you're in there and you've got that music cranked in that control room, and you're mixing that music. After a little while, you don't do that with headphones. I do this with headphones, but it's just me and one guitar. But you wouldn't do that kind of music with headphones. And you'll go tone deaf after I think it's 7 to 10 minutes is what they say. So you want to mix music for about a good 5 minutes. Step outside, do whatever it is you need to do, and then wait about the same amount of time at least, and then come back and start again. Because I learned that, the hard way. Sometimes I'd work all day and stay up at least 3/4 of the night mixing music from bands that had come in or people that had come in. And the recording just didn't sound right because I'd download it to my final product, take it out to the vehicle and slide it in, and it sounded horrible. And I thought, what in the world's going on here? Well, that was part of the problem. You can't just sit in front with that music blaring in your ears, mixing music, and expect your ears to be telling you the truth after somewhere between 5 to 7 or 8 minutes. And that's about all you get. And I think I would go around 10. Finally, I settled on about 10 minutes before I could start turning out a product that sounded good, But Paul Osborn, he still owns Audio Dallas, to my knowledge. He's still up there. I haven't talked to Paul in a very, very long time. But he was a good friend, and started off in Rockwall, Texas, and has He had a building built outside of his home there, a little studio. And he had some very, very well-known people that were clients. And to this day, now he's in downtown Dallas, or he was last time I checked. And Audio Dallas has grown into a monstrosity of a recording studio. So thought I'd plug him, yeah, I miss spending some time with Paul. Paul was a great guy. And still is a great guy, I'm sure. But anyway, that's kind of the music history and what got me to finally getting into, fingerstyle. What else can I tell you about this music journey? I think the big turning point for me was when I said, I'm going to learn how to do fingerstyle guitar, Now, have I learned it? I don't think so. Am I better at it than I was when I first started? Oh, I'm miles better. I wouldn't. It's not. I couldn't do it for a living. I'd choke up probably in the middle of a song, and you can't be making a bunch of mistakes when you're in front of a live audience. And that's just not who I am anymore. I don't think I have the willpower to do that sort of thing, or the desire to do that sort of thing. But I do have a lot of personal satisfaction that I want to get out of a guitar, and so. I'll keep playing till you bury me or I can't move my hands anymore. I just love them. I just love guitars, Some interesting things that's happened along the journey after I found out about fingerstyle and started pursuing it and got to where I could play a little bit. The first thing was, I met Doyle Dykes through a friend of mine, Kelly Barber. I'll put a picture up of me and Kelly. He owns Action Sound down in Hawkins, Texas, and he's a super, super nice guy, talented son of a gun, man, when it comes to working on guitars and that kind of thing. He's got a heck of a reputation, and almost everybody in the music business that owns guitar stores and so forth knows Kelly. And Kelly introduced me to Doyle Dykes, so I met Doyle a couple of times. And he's a very nice man and one killer guitar player, fingerstylist. That man is amazingly talented and a genuinely nice guy. And so I put a picture up of me and Doyle. And I would say, meeting Norm at Norman's Rare Guitars there in Tarzana out in L.A. County in California. I was introduced to Norm through Paul Georgia on this channel, who's become a very, very close friend. As has, David Hayes is another one that's a pretty close friend here on the channel as well. People I talk to fairly regular. But Paul, I was out in the LA area on business, and Paul said, have you been to Norman's Rare Guitars? And I said, no, I haven't been there. I've heard of it. Haven't been there. And he goes, well, look, I know Norm. He said, why don't you go by there and introduce yourself and let him know that I sent you over there? And so I did. And Norm was there, as well as some musicians in the store from the UK, and that were over there doing a tour. And there was some other people, probably pretty well known in the music business, but I didn't recognize them. I don't keep up all that much with newer music, you know. I probably should, but I don't. And so anyway, I had a chance to sit down and visit with Norm for quite a while. And if you look on the community tab, I suggest you do that from time to time. Go look at the shorts. They're less than a minute, and I've only got one where I talk, and that's to put a little small guitar review up. And the rest of them are pretty much music, you know, guitar playing, and you might enjoy that. But check that community tab periodically. I don't constantly post, okay? And I surely don't constantly post on that community tab. It's rare. So if you go look at it over the last 2 or 3 years, there's not very much up there at all. But the last one I put up was my visit to Norman's Rare Guitars, and got a chance to meet a few people and really enjoyed that trip. And Norman really is, he's a super, super nice guy, and just a great inventory of guitars. He went in the back and got one of his guys to go in the back and pull me out a 1953 SJ200 Gibson and brought it out. And folks, my mouth literally dropped to the floor when I saw that guitar. It's unbelievable. But it was about 20 grand, and so I hurriedly left the store, gave Norm a hug and left. Had to get out of there. It's not, you know, wants and needs are two different things, and so I really had to talk myself out of buying that Gibson. It was phenomenal. But anyway, my guitar journey, folks, there it is. There's not much to me. But I think listening to Mississippi John Hurt and seeing him play for the first time on a video on YouTube, I said, I'm tired of not making any progress on my guitar playing. And I'm going to learn how to play guitar. Now, that doesn't mean that I have learned, but I know a whole lot more now than I did 5 years ago. Okay? And I appreciate you folks coming along for the journey. I've really enjoyed it. You know, I teach on this channel, Fingerstyle. I wouldn't say I was a great teacher, but I think I can get you through it and get you going on Fingerstyle. And the other thing is, I don't care how hard this looks. If you will follow the directions, and you don't know how to play Fingerstyle, if you'll follow the directions on these beginner guitar videos, Fingerstyle guitar, you will learn how to play Fingerstyle. Your fingers will cooperate, and before long it just becomes natural, you know. But anyway, folks, a rather short journey, but it has been very, very rewarding. And spending time with you folks has been the most rewarding part out of this whole thing, I think. So I appreciate you. Take care of your friends. Take care of your family. God bless. We'll see you next time.